Chairman, here's my ask, and it's a sincere one. Let's use the days ahead to convene a bipartisan, good faith effort to resolve the remaining issues at the heart of this funding fight and keep DHS fully operational and give the American people the security and the stability that they expect. If you recall, Chairman, we all came up with a bill that was agreed on by the Senate, by the House, by the Democrats, by the Republicans, until the second shooting came in. I understand dynamics changed, but we were almost there. We were there, Democrats and Republicans and everybody, but the second shooting brought different dynamics, and I think we can get there to address that. So shutting down the Department of Homeland doesn't make our borders stronger. It does not make our communities safer. It does not honor the public servants who depend on us to do our jobs. So I look forward to hearing from today's witnesses, and I look forward just as much to working with the colleagues on both sides of the aisle to finish this bill and move this country forward. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thanks to the gentleman from Texas. I now recognize the gentleman from Oklahoma, the ranking member of the full committee, Chairman Cole, and the floor is yours, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, my friend. And I have some official remarks, and I'm going to make some impromptu remarks after that. But I'd be remiss before I say this is the first time you and I have had the opportunity to appear in public since you announced that your impending retirement. And you didn't tell me ahead of time, right? You know I would have tried to talk you out of it. But I just want to tell you how proud I am of you and the manner in which you've risen up through this committee, the manner in which you've chaired one of the most difficult committees that we do have. I know you will give us 100% in the time that you'll still be here. I wish you well in whatever your future endeavors are, but I just want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for your friendship. You know, we don't always agree on both sides of the aisle, but I bet you there's not anybody on our committee that doesn't respect you and appreciate you and regard you as a friend. And I feel the same way about your ranking member as well, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But again, you're going to be missed, and just thank you. And I'm sorry we've given you your most difficult task right here at the end of your career. That may have had something to do with your leaving. I don't know. But thank you for the way you've represented this committee in a bipartisan way and the service you've rendered our country, and particularly your leadership in trying to get this extraordinarily difficult bill through at a very, very challenging time. So thank you. You bet. Chairman Amodei, Ranking Member Cuellar, thank both of you, and I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. Every member at this dais has an Article I responsibility, and every member here, regardless of party, knows how damaging a shutdown is, both to the power of the purse and to the American people. The consequences are real, and so should our conversations in relationship to the situation at hand. I find we're in a very difficult position right now that has made this bill the epicenter of a controversy that is larger than the appropriations itself, and probably doesn't belong in this particular venue. But I'm proud of the bill that this committee produced and that you and the ranking member voted for, and I appreciate that bipartisan effort to try and deal with a challenging bill at a very difficult time. That final full-year legislation that you presented was negotiated in good faith across chambers and parties, and including funded for body-worn cameras and de-escalation training, two things that my friends on the other side requested, and I thought they were excellent requests and excellent suggestions, and I think they improved the bill. They invested in FEMA and cybersecurity efforts, upheld the missions of the Coast Guard and TSA. Our Homeland Security measure is not a single-issue bill. Treating it as such ignores the full scope of impacts before us and abandons responsible governance. Further, these actions will not achieve the objectives that Democrats claim to seek. After years of failed border policies, lax enforcement, and uncontrolled mass migration, President Trump and Republicans acted decisively to stop the chaos. Through reconciliation, Congress delivered historic resources to secure the border, protect the homeland, strengthen ICE and CBP, and support of public safety. So no matter what opponents say or do, immigration enforcement, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, will continue. But if we persist in holding government funding hostage and force a third shutdown in less than 4 months, it'll be a dramatic mistake and will put our national security at risk. These risks, by the way, aren't hypothetical. TSA personnel and other federal workers will be forced to work without a paycheck again. Coast Guard operations will face uncertainty and disruptions again. Counterterrorism and cybersecurity capacity will be slowed again. FEMA resources will be reduced as winter storms barrel across the country. Law enforcement training will be canceled and obstructed, and a pay raise that we secured for air traffic controllers remains in limbo. Operational support, workforce morale, and the day-to-day missions that keep the American people safe will all suffer as a result. I know the panel before us will provide clarity on impacts that are being overlooked. And I'll end with this. The appropriations process shouldn't be used as a proxy for other policy disputes. Discussions on reforms, oversight, and accountability across government can happen without leveraging the funding of agencies as collateral. And I appreciate our witnesses for being here today. Let me make a few off-the-cuff comments, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Again, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the ranking member for working together and voting together to give us a good product. And I want to thank the ranking member of the full committee for working with us to make some changes and additions that I think were good changes and additions, and I think will improve the process. I also want to thank the ranking member of the full committee for working with us on process in the sense that we understood that this was a very challenging time, that this committee was caught in the focus of a controversy that nobody up here had anything to do with creating. And she laid out a path that I may not be able to vote for this, but here's a way we can get the funding through. And she kept her word at every stage of that path and gave me very good and practical advice that would allow members on both sides of the aisle to vote their conscience, but would not interrupt the funding of these critical agencies in front of us. And for that, I will always be grateful to my friend. I want to thank our leadership for working with us to repackage a six-bill package in ways that, again, would allow us to move forward where we agreed, would allow members that had principal difference of opinions to express those differences on the floor and yet still move forward and not risk the funding. I have to tell you, I'm much less pleased with our colleagues on the other side of the rotunda. Quite frankly, we did for them what we did here. That is, tell us the way you want the legislation to package it so you can pass it. And we gave them exactly what they asked for. And we gave it in exactly the form they asked for it. And I don't doubt for a moment the people that I were working with, were acting in good faith. Our counterparts in the Senate are valued partners to the ranking member and me, and I admire and like both of them. But I have to tell you, a leadership that allows their negotiators to agree to one thing and then upsets that agreement, which was done, by the way, in the first shutdown, has led now to a second and potentially a third shutdown of parts of the government. And so I don't have a lot of respect for that leadership on the Democratic side in the United States Senate because they have injected issues that are not part of the appropriations process twice into the process. First on things like Obamacare, premium support, Medicaid, things that this committee has zero to do with. And the issues they are concerned about in the Homeland area are issues that are not appropriations issues. Nobody's arguing about the amounts of money in this bill. Nobody's arguing about how this committee distributed them. They're arguing about practices and policies, and that's legitimate. It's not legitimate to use this bill as a hostage and use the men and women that you supervise and work with as pawns in a larger struggle. They should get paid. They should get the resources they need. They should get them on time. We can work out the other issues. We should not be holding your respective agencies hostage, and the men and women who have put their lives on the lines in many cases, who have served us faithfully, should not wonder whether or not they're going to get paid. Their families should not wonder whether or not they're going to get supported. We can work out these other issues. I will tell you personally, I think it's unconscionable if Congress leaves and does not solve the problem. I'm sure Munich is a great place. I've been there many times. The beer is outstanding, but we don't need to go to a defense conference someplace in Europe when we're not taking care of the defense of the United States of America. And the agencies that you are all involved with are critical to that defense and do their job, every single day. I would be embarrassed to walk past a TSA agent that wasn't getting paid so I could go someplace else. And that's my personal opinion. That's not necessarily the opinion of my leadership or anybody else, but we should stay here and get this resolved. We should make sure that men and women that we have already put in a terrible position once for 43 days don't have to go through it again. And so I just feel very strongly about that. I know there are good faith efforts going on to talk about these things, but I'm tired of politicians making a political point at the expense of men and women who do their job every single day and don't ask for anything other than what we promise them to do their job. So that's just my opinion, Mr. Chairman, but I wanted to take it. But again, I want to thank my friend, the ranking member of the full committee. This House did its job because she worked with us to do the job, and it would not have done it without her. So I have great admiration, and again, I want to make crystal clear, I don't have any problems with the friends we negotiated in the United States Senate. They did their job, and I think they acted in good faith. I do have a problem when at the last minute, when we have things worked out and agreed to and a process agreed to, that Senate Democratic leadership decides I'm going to make a point, and I'm going to make it at the expense of tens of thousands of federal employees that should not be laid off. So that's my personal opinion. I feel very strongly about that. The commitment I'll make is we will continue to work in good faith with our friends, and our friends in the House have worked with us in good faith, and we have been able to get to where we need to go. And I don't have, again, any problem with these other issues being discussed. I think they're appropriate to be discussed. I think, there are some concerns. I think there's been some genuine efforts on both sides of the aisle to find some middle ground on things like body camera training. There seem to be some other efforts underway on the administration's part, but whatever our differences, we should stay here and work them out without shutting down parts of the government that are critical to the defense of the United States and then asking the people that we employ there, oh, you could keep working for free while we sort this out. And by the way, we're leaving for a week or so. And that the other area I will say, I mean, anybody that thought a 2-week CR when you were going to be gone a week would lead to a result. To be fair to the majority leader in the United States Senate, he asked for 6 weeks. That's a more realistic deadline. And again, I don't have any problem with doing a CR and continuing to work through, but it's just crazy to have done 2 weeks, which was the Senate Democrat demand, and frankly, to be thinking about leaving here before that 2 weeks is even up and head someplace else. I mean, I don't understand it, and I am enormously frustrated by that. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to rant and rave. But again, I want to thank you and the ranking member of this subcommittee. I want to thank my colleague, the ranking member of the full committee, for working in good faith, finding common ground, getting us right to the verge of funding the government and leaving a path open to continue to work on areas where we disagree and make changes, which again, my friends on the other side have made some excellent suggestions, some of which we incorporated in the final product. So we're going to keep working it, but it's an enormously frustrating thing for me, and I'm sure it's enormously frustrating for every member on both sides of the aisle in this panel. We ought to finish our job and fund the government. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To recognize the gentlelady from Connecticut, the ranking member of the full committee, Ms. DeLauro, for her opening statement. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to echo my friend and my colleague, Congressman Cole, the chairman of the full committee's comments. I have had the opportunity of working with you the last several years, and whether it is in subcommittee or full committee, engaging on issues that you care about, that we care about, it has always been a civil, a respectful, and an honest discussion of what we are trying to effectuate. And so in that context, for me, that is a hallmark of how we do our business here, is when we can disagree about a number of issues, and yet we can find the way to help to try to make a difference. That's a hallmark, I might add, of the Appropriations Committee, which is historic in the sense that Democrats and Republicans have come together around compromise and moved the bill forward. I've said over and over again, my colleagues have heard me, that the appropriations process is the center, it's the heart and soul, it's the guts of the federal government. If there is no agreement on both sides of the aisle, both houses, this government shuts down. And there are serious consequences about shutting that down. And we have worked in order to eliminate that, but we have also, and I thank the chair of this subcommittee and the chair of the full committee to understand that the power of the purse resides in the Appropriations Committee. And we have provided in all of our bills, including in the Homeland Bill, the guardrails that, quite frankly, the administration and the Office of Management and Budget have tried to eviscerate, and to take that power of the purse, transfer it from the Congress, and set it in the executive. And quite frankly, I believe that what we have done at the subcommittee and at the full committee levels is say no. No, we are going to make the decisions that reflect what the American people have asked us to do on their behalf. So I want to thank you. We will miss you and your personality, but your commitment to making this government work and the reasons for that. You know why you've come to serve here, and it's been a pleasure. I will also say, a dear friend, and we're going to differ on some things, and we can differ strongly, but we knew we had a mission. And the bills that were passed, all 11 of them, and the ones last week, will make a hell of a lot of difference in the lives of the American people and address what is their single biggest issue today, and that's their cost of living and affordability, not a hoax, a reality. And the bills that we have fostered and put forward address that issue foursquare. And for that, I too treasure the friendship that I have with the chair of the full committee in order to understand, to get things done and to make a difference. And let me move to today's hearing. And I thank you for it, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be blunt here with you. Let us be perfectly clear about what we're doing here today. This hearing is not about solutions. This hearing, in my view, is for show. This is supposedly a hearing about funding for the Department of Homeland Security, and yet the Secretary of Homeland Security is in hiding. Secretary Noem should be here today. She should be explaining why her department is arresting and deporting American citizens. Why is it pulling law-abiding residents out of their cars, beating them in the streets? Why it tear-gassed an infant and a pastor and blinded a young man? She should be answering here for the shameless lies that she has told about 2 American citizens who were killed in cold blood by her agents. But she is not here. She is hiding because she knows that her conduct is indefensible. There are also no representatives here from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement or Customs and Border Protection, the two agencies at the heart of this matter. Democrats requested that they be present. Why are they not here? That should tell you everything you need to know about what this hearing is really all about. It is not to address the real concerns of millions of Americans over the unchecked brutality of officers within those agencies, brutality that has left 2 Americans dead and countless others seriously injured. No, the goal is to pretend they do not exist while perpetuating the fiction that Democrats are opposed to funding for disaster relief or cybersecurity or the Coast Guard or Transportation Security Administration or Secret Service, when nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, it is the Republican leadership that has chosen to hold your agencies hostage to avoid implementing reforms that they know are necessary to keep our communities safe from Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Customs and Border Patrol. I have introduced today a bill that would fully fund every agency that is represented in this hearing today. Remember that as my Republican colleagues pose leading questions to our witnesses about what a shutdown would mean for their agencies. I've read the testimony. My bill sets Customs and Border Protection and Immigration and Customs Enforcement funding aside, while negotiations over needed dramatic reforms continue separately. ICE cannot be abolished, but I will not provide a single cent for those agencies until dramatic changes are made. We will not provide a single cent for those agencies until real changes are made. The vast majority of Americans are overwhelmingly support the reforms that the Democrats have laid out. Requiring agents to get a warrant from a judge before they kick in someone's door, preventing U.S. citizens from being detained or deported, stopping agents from camping out at schools, at hospitals, at churches, requiring the use of body cameras, removing the masks, presenting identification on uniforms, allowing independent investigations into misconduct, establishing a legally binding use of force policy, and ending the roving patrols that harass bystanders based on their race are all reforms that are backed by a strong majority of Americans. My Republican colleagues know these reforms are necessary. If they really believed everything was fine, they would have those agencies testifying here today. They would not be afraid of the questions of myself or my Democratic colleagues would ask them if they are behaving in a way that was worthy of further funding. Instead, my Republican colleagues have set Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol to the side for a separate conversation. I am grateful, so grateful, to the witnesses who have made the time to appear here today. The work that you and your agencies carry out every single day is crucial. My Democratic colleagues and I fought hard to ensure that your agencies receive the resources that you need when we are negotiating the full-year funding bill. I might add, we did work in a bipartisan way to address these issues. These provisions are reflected in the measure that I have introduced this morning. I want to protect your mission. I want to protect the progress you make and the further progress that you can make. I want to protect provisions that we secured that stop Secretary Noem and President Trump from permanently dismantling FEMA. The Secretary appeared before our committee and indicated that FEMA should be eliminated. When I questioned the interim director and say, should it be eliminated or should there be reforms? He stated that it shouldn't be eliminated, but there should be major reforms. The next day he was fired. The very next day he was fired. I want to include the language that we agreed on that would prevent President Trump from hollowing out the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, especially as the volume and sophistication of cyber attacks increases relentlessly. I want to protect the resources we secured for the brave men and women of the Secret Service who put their lives on the line every day and who historically have worked to protect every single president of the United States. And I want to make sure that the United States Coast Guard receives the more than $500 million funding increase we fought for during our negotiations, so that they have the resources to respond to drug smuggling, human trafficking, and natural disasters that threaten our country. I am proud to be in the state that represents the Coast Guard and in the city of New Haven, Connecticut, with the Coast Guard facility. I want your men and women to be well taken care of, to be able to carry out their job. All of these provisions are included in the legislation that I have introduced today. If funding lapses on Saturday, it is the Republican leadership who will bear the responsibility for the impacts that we will hear about today. I thank the chairman and I yield back.
Thank you, Madam Ranking Member. We'll start out with the opening statement from Admiral Allen. Without objection, the witness's full written testimony will be entered into the record. With that in mind, we would ask you to please summarize your opening statement in 5 minutes or less. Admiral, the floor is yours.
Chairman Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro, Chairman Amade, Ranking Member Cuellar, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify today on the severe impacts a government shutdown would have on your United States Coast Guard. As a vital instrument of national power, the Coast Guard controls, secures, and defends the U.S. border and maritime approaches, facilitates the safe and secure flow of commerce, and responds to crises and contingencies that may come without warning. As a proud member of the Department of Homeland Security and the only armed force under DHS, every action the Coast Guard takes is dedicated to protecting our nation. The American people depend on us, and we provide a remarkable return on investment, but only with consistent and predictable appropriations. A lapse in appropriation requires the Coast Guard to suspend all missions except those for national security or the protection of life and property. A funding lapse has severe and lasting challenges for our workforce, operational readiness, and long-term capabilities. More importantly, a lapse lasting more than a few days will halt pay for the Coast Guard 56,000 active duty, reserve, and civilian personnel. This is not a distant administrative issue. The uncertainty of missing paychecks negatively impacts readiness and creates a significant financial hardship for service members and their families. Missed pay erodes the trust our men and women have in the nation they serve and those who lead them. Shutdowns cripple morale and directly harm our ability to recruit and retain the talented Americans we need to meet growing demands. The work our crews perform every day is dangerous and challenging. Our people deserve the resources they need to perform their duties safely and efficiently. The Coast Guard gunner's mate manning a weapon in the Straits of Hormuz should not have to worry if their family will be able to pay rent while being shadowed by Iranian vessels. Our aviation survival technician deploying from a helicopter into treacherous seas should not have to worry if their family can buy groceries this week. These jobs require dedication, focus, and attention to detail. Any distraction puts the member, mission, crew, and unit at risk. Short-term solutions only provide temporary relief. No one in our military should be forced to live with this uncertainty from paycheck to paycheck. A shutdown also erodes mission readiness. Certain training stops, including training for pilots, air crews, and boat crews, who must build and maintain proficiency to operate in hazardous conditions. Our cutters, aircraft, and boats further degrade as scheduled maintenance is deferred and the flow of spare parts is cut off. This results in grounded aircraft, static cutters, and a multi-million-dollar parts backlog that takes time to fix. We are unable to pay our contractors, including small businesses who rely on timely payment to ensure cash flow and survive. We cease activities that do not protect the safety of life or property from imminent danger, including routine patrols, some fisheries enforcement, maintenance of aids to navigation, and commercial vessel safety inspections. The National Maritime Center closes, halting the issuance and renewal of credentials for thousands of U.S. merchant mariners who rely on valid credentials to work and who are vital to ensuring the flow of commerce throughout the U.S. ports and waterways continues. The ripple effect causes delay in vessel inspections, financing, and regulatory approvals that can cost the U.S. economy billions of dollars every week and translates to higher prices for Americans everywhere. I urge you to continue your support of the men and women of the Coast Guard by not allowing funding to lapse. To keep our crews and assets ready to serve the American people, we require the resources necessary to fulfill our vital missions. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. Next, we'll go to Administrator McNeil for TSA. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Good morning, Chairman Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro, Ranking Member Cuellar, and Chairman Amade, and the distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the invitation to testify before you today on behalf of the Transportation Security Administration. I'm honored to be here and grateful for the long-standing and productive partnership TSA shares with this subcommittee. DHS and TSA were created on the heels of 9/11 to help the United States stay a step ahead of terrorists and bad actors. A lack of funding and predictability of resourcing will pose significant challenges to our ability to deliver transportation security with the level of excellence we expect and Americans deserve. We need Congress to pass DHS's budget for fiscal year 2026. TSA's critical national security mission does not stop during a shutdown. Around 95%, or 61,000 of TSA's employees are deemed essential and continue to work to protect the traveling public during a shutdown while not getting paid. These TSA employees live and work across the nation within your communities, securing over 430 commercial airports and performing incredibly challenging and demanding jobs. I would like to take a moment to recognize the TSA workforce for their unrelenting efforts day in and day out to secure the nation's transportation systems. During the recent 43-day shutdown, TSA personnel continued to report to work without pay and kept our operations running smoothly, ensuring millions of passengers arrived at their destinations safely and securely. While average wait times across the country remained within our established standards, TSA saw increased rates of unscheduled absences and localized spikes in wait times as the shutdown dragged on and the cost of coming to work became more and more untenable for our frontline workforce. We heard reports of officers sleeping in their cars at airports to save money on gas, selling their blood and plasma, and taking on second jobs to make ends meet. Many were subject to late fees for missed bill payments, eviction notices, loss of childcare, and more, all the while expected to serve their country and perform at the highest level when in uniform. 12 weeks later, some are just recovering from the financial impact of the 43-day shutdown. Many are still reeling from it. We cannot put them through another such experience. It would be unconscionable. Today, I'm joined by several outstanding TSOs I want to recognize for their service to our nation. They represent TSA's core values and are top-performing, dedicated team members and leaders in their respective airports in Texas, Iowa, and Arizona. Maggie Robinson McGee, she serves as a TSO and joined TSA after witnessing the tragedy of 9/11, and she's a plank holder for the agency and has worked in San Antonio International Airports for 24 years. Not getting paid during the shutdown created significant challenges and personal hardship for her. Yolanda Mendoza serves as a lead TSO working at Eastern Iowa Airport for 8 years. During the shutdown, not knowing when she would receive her next paycheck weighed heavily on her, caused anxiety, and affected her spouse and children as well. It reminded her that shutdowns don't just impact government operations. They disrupt households and create real fear for families who rely on stable paychecks to stay afloat. Jonathan Abtahi serves as a lead TSO working at Tucson International Airport for 8 years. After missing multiple paychecks, he had no choice but to put everything on his credit cards. Even after the government reopened and he received back pay, he is still playing catch-up financially due to the high interest rates on the credit cards. And Patricia Pittman, she serves as an explosive detection canine handler working at Ronald Reagan National Airport for 10 years. During the shutdown, she was forced to draw out funds from her retirement savings as well as food donations to provide for her family until she received her first post-shutdown paycheck. She is accompanied today by her canine Rosh. We are incredibly fortunate to have them on our team. In addition to the grave impact on the TSA workforce, without budget certainty, we are at risk of critical technology deployments being pushed even further out. A lack of adequate funding and capital investment for technology impedes our ability to give the workforce the tools it needs to do their jobs. The FIFA World Cup is only 121 days away, kicking off on June 11th, when America will welcome millions of visitors from the world over to our country. TSA will be front and center, welcoming travelers and fans safely and securely through our airports as they travel to see the games. We need to ensure we are adequately prepared, both from a staffing and technology perspective, and we do not have the luxury of time. The nation cannot afford the safety and security of the traveling public to be threatened by budget uncertainties. On behalf of TSA, I respectfully urge Congress to provide full-year funding without delay. Chairman Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro, Chairman Amade, Ranking Member Cuellar, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, I thank you for your support of TSA, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Madam Director. Doctor. Now, I've got a name that has 4 out of the 5 vowels in it, so people have difficulty pronouncing that. You, however, sir, are the Olympic gold medal champion. So rather than try to fake it and bluff my way through or whatever, and by the way, it's like this is the phonetic pronunciation, you gotta be kidding me. That helps me with nothing. So what I'm gonna do is say it's a pleasure to see you here today, Doctor. The floor is yours, please proceed.
Chairman Cole, Ranking Member Cuellar, and Ms. DeLauro, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Madhu Gotumukala, and I serve as the Acting Director of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. Before joining the federal government, I oversaw statewide technology and cybersecurity operations for the state of South Dakota. Earlier in my career, I worked across telecom, wireless, and health technology sectors. Those experiences shape how I view and understand the state and local governments and the critical infrastructure operators experience risk on the ground. I'm honored that President Trump and Secretary Noem asked me to serve at CISA. I deeply value the dedication and professionalism of our workforce, whose tireless efforts ensure the safety and security of our nation's critical infrastructure. Since President Trump took office, CISA has been laser-focused on fulfilling the mission the Congress gave us to support, strengthen, secure our nation's critical infrastructure. Our work today is squarely aligned with the agency's original statutory purpose. That means working with the government and private sector partners to ensure the digital and physical systems that our nation depends on remains resilient. CISA has strengthened our operational capabilities to detect and to respond to cyber threats. We deepened collaboration across government and industry and continue to provide guidance to our critical infrastructure. Under the Trump administration, CISA is focused on our #1 priority, that is protecting and defending the American people. We also continue to share threat and incident reports, coordinate intelligence across the federal government, and partner through structured meetings and threat briefings to strengthen the resilience nationwide. As the operational lead for the federal cybersecurity, CISA strengthened its coordination with each agency to promote the adoption of risk-based common policies and best practices to effectively respond to the ever-evolving threat landscape. And please understand, the federal government cannot fight our nation's adversaries alone. We must empower our partners. That is why CISA has worked alongside our state, local, tribal, territorial governments, delivering tailored resources, training, and technical assistance to help our partners anticipate, withstand, and recover from threats. And these efforts help ensure Americans can continue to rely on essential services. However, a lapse in funding would impede CISA's ability to continue the good work. At CISA, a shutdown would degrade our capacity to provide timely and actionable guidance to help partners defend their networks. Operations would become strained and service delivery delayed in core mission areas such as cyber response, security assessments, stakeholder engagements, training, exercises, and special event planning. And it would force over a third of our frontline security experts and threat hunters to work without pay, even when the nation-state actors intensify efforts to exploit the systems that Americans rely on. And during a shutdown, CISA's activities are limited to sustaining the essential functions that are necessary to ensure the safety of human life or protection of property. Notably, this would mean that our efforts to achieve a final rule on cyber incident reporting as required by the Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act would be paused and further delayed, and work to implement binding operational directives that protect federal networks from significant cyber threats, such as the one that we released last week on mitigating risk from end-of-support edge devices, also could be paused. I want to be clear, when the government shuts down, cyber threats do not, and our adversaries work 24/7. Even a brief lapse can have lasting consequences on small businesses, federal networks, and American taxpayers. And the adverse effects of shutdown are not just felt by our agency alone, but extend to the communities we serve, as delays or disruptions may impact our collective ability to protect and support the national infrastructure security. Funding for CISA is essential to safeguarding the nation's critical infrastructure. I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Deputy Director Quinn, please proceed. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Amade, Ranking Member Cuellar, members of the subcommittee, and of course, Chairman Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro. Thank you for being here as well. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today about the impacts of a shutdown on the Secret Service and our zero-fail mission. As you know, we execute a dynamic mission of protection and investigations. We protect our nation's leadership, we investigate financial crimes, and we conduct protective intelligence investigations around the world every day. I began my career in 1998 in the New York field office. It is now my distinct honor to represent the men and women of our great agency as their 24th Deputy Director. I know this job well. I have a long and deep history with the organization and can tell you that the more than 8,000 men and women of the Secret Service are among the hardest working personnel in federal government. Our personnel across all job categories routinely work extraordinary hours and do extraordinary things. They sacrifice greatly to execute our zero-fail mission. No one in the Secret Service is spared from the impact and extreme demands required to be successful on our job. It goes well beyond a missed birthday, a missed holiday, or extreme periods of travel. It truly is a lifestyle of sacrifice. A DHS shutdown would include our agency. The reality is, the next day, everyone will show up. We will continue to protect and serve, and to the casual observer, there will be no visible difference. However, gaps in funding have a profound impact on our agency today and into the future. There is no pause button on our mission. The paychecks may stop, but the work will continue, although morale fades as bills come in and the job that is already difficult is made more difficult. The impacts of a shutdown do not fall neatly within our core function. Rather, they manifest in areas where the results are not readily recognizable. At the top of the list is needed reform. The assassination attempt on President Trump's life brought forward hard truths for our agency and critical areas for improvement: airspace security, communications and IT infrastructure, hiring and retention, training, overarching technological improvements. We are today on the cusp of implementing generational change for our organization. A shutdown halts our reforms and undermines the momentum that we, including all of you, have worked so hard to build together. The impacts may not be seen tomorrow, but I assure you we will feel the ripple effects for some time. Delayed contracts, diminished hiring, halted new programs will be the result. We've been working hard to address needed reforms. Many of these efforts will stop with a shutdown. New personnel are not hired, or at minimum, hiring efforts slow down. New programs are paused, and our efforts to train, equip, and deploy the best and the brightest begin to lag. We've already begun planning for the multiple national special security events for 2026 and, of course, the 2028 Olympics. This critical work will continue during a shutdown. However, in many cases, it will be on the backs of our greatest resource, the men and women of the Secret Service. Our difficult mission becomes exponentially harder during a lapse in funding. Other national programs, such as the National Computer Forensics Institute and our support for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, either comes to a halt or at minimum is impacted greatly by a shutdown. We are poised to reach new heights of excellence with the most dedicated workforce in law enforcement, and we will find ways to get the job done, albeit at the expense of our people and progress. Make no mistake, government shutdowns have real and lasting consequences. Plans for the future are put on hold, and the opportunity for meaningful change is lost. The men and women of the Secret Service, Director Curran, and myself are committed to progress, change, and reform. I respectfully ask that DHS be funded at the levels that will enable our success. We cannot do it alone and unfunded. I thank you for your support and look forward to taking your questions.
Chairman Cole, Chairman Amade, Ranking Member DeLauro, and Ranking Member Cuellar. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today on the shutdown impacts at FEMA. I'm Greg Phillips. I'm Associate Administrator for the Office of Response and Recovery, and I look forward to our conversation. Over the last year, under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Noem, FEMA continues to transition into a lean, deployable force that empowers state and local governments to lead disaster response and recovery. No longer is FEMA a bloated, DC-centric bureaucratic organization that has often failed to deliver. After years of mismanagement and mission drift, the agency is now refocused on its core mission. Additionally, FEMA and the department instituted sweeping reforms to its grant programs, eliminated egregious waste, fraud, and abuse, and the misuse of taxpayer dollars. Under this administration, Americans have come first. Gone are the days of ideologically motivated projects, the use of FEMA funds to house illegal aliens in luxury hotels, and initiatives that do not save lives or protect property. FEMA is now focused on serving American taxpayers after disasters strike. In their hour of greatest need, FEMA is there. In just the first year of this administration, red tape has been cut and the processes have been updated. In recent days, DHS and FEMA led an immediate and coordinated response to a historically severe winter weather emergency that simultaneously impacted 30 states. FEMA funneled critical resources directly into the states in support of governors and emergency managers, staged more than 300 generators, 7 million meals, 3 million liters of water, and 650,000 blankets to sites across the country. Finally, FEMA ensured that its 28 urban search and rescue teams were not just on standby, but ready to action on day one. Had this winter storm happened under a lapsed appropriation, coordination with the state partners and movement of resources would have lagged. Under lapse in appropriations, FEMA will not be able to continue carrying out any missions other than life-saving and supporting disaster response efforts. FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund has sufficient balances to continue emergency response activities for the foreseeable future, and life-saving and life-sustaining activities are an accepted activity under DHS's LAPS plan. That said, if a catastrophic disaster occurred, the DRF would be seriously strained. A government shutdown would severely disrupt FEMA's ability to reimburse states for disaster relief costs and to support our recovery from disasters. Delays in deploying financial assistance to affected communities would hinder timely disaster results. States and communities would be forced to wait for long-term response work to continue. A lapse in appropriations would also result in the furlough of many FEMA employees, limiting the agent's ability to coordinate effectively with the state, local, tribal, and territorial partners. This will hinder communication, planning, joint operations, effective disaster relief outcomes, and complicate recovery efforts. Crippling FEMA's central operations and recovery-related work will come at the expense of the American people. FEMA plays a central role in supporting the continuity of government, consequence management, and national security missions. A delay in year-long funding could undermine the readiness for our major incidents, including terrorism and large-scale disasters, by disrupting critical preparedness and response activities, including readiness. A government shutdown will erode public trust in the federal government's ability to respond to emergencies. And even though emergency response activities will continue during the shutdown, communities, as we saw in Mississippi, feel vulnerable during the disaster and unsupported at critical times, leads to lasting effects in public confidence and resilience. Finally, not only is hurricane season quickly approaching, but FEMA continues to prepare for and respond to other threats like flooding, tornadoes, wildfires, earthquakes, and the recent winter storms. Without appropriation, this long-term planning and coordination with state and local partners will be irrevocably impacted. For example, a lapse in funding will cause significant disruption to training for first responders, such as the cancellation of resident courses at the National Disaster and Emergency Management University in Emmitsburg, Maryland. The import of these trainings cannot be measured, and their absence will be felt in our local communities. In emergency management, time is always the most important resource. In summary, a federal government shutdown would have far-reaching and serious consequences for FEMA's operations and for the nation's ability to prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. Thank you for your support and the opportunity to appear before you today. I look forward to your questions.
Questions for the end after the other members have gone, but I do have one housekeeping thing that I want to get out of the way before we go to my colleague from Texas for his questions. And there are two of them. Doctor, this committee asked CISA a while back for a copy of your reorganization plan because you had been, not you personally, but it's like, hey, we want to know what your reorganization plan is. This committee's worked very hard in a bipartisan manner to make sure that you folks didn't get cut to insignificance funding-wise. It's my understanding that that plan is underway and we still haven't received it. So, not looking for a response. If you got it ready, then get it. By Friday at close of business, which is 6:00 p.m. here, we better have a copy of that plan or the reason why there isn't a plan and whatever is going on. We've been professional, we've been respectful, we expect exactly the same thing in return. Madam Administrator, there are many people on this committee who have people who have went through the 43-day shutdown, the most recent one, and we're looking at another one who we're talking about. There's some program in your agency, it's like, well, maybe it's sick leave, maybe it's whatever it is. We want a briefing, and it can be over the phone. We're trying to be respectful and you know, professional. We want a briefing on, and I can tell you there's 40 people in Nevada, speaking only for my neck of the woods, there's 40 people in Nevada who still have unresolved shutdown pay issues, whether they were charged for annual leave or whatever the heck. We expect access to somebody who's in a position to speak for your organization before the close of business Friday to say, here's what we got, or whatever. But so far, we've got not much. So, thank you very much for your professionalism and respect. Mr. Ranking Member, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly join you in those requests. First of all, I want to thank all of y'all. We appreciate the work that y'all do and appreciate the men and women that are sitting behind you and the men and women that are out there in the field. So we say thank you and we agree we should fund you the way we should be doing. I think we all agree that the agencies you all represent are important to our national, economic, and public safety. And that's why we do not want to see you all held back while we continue the negotiations, as the ranking member has said, your sister agencies of CBP and ICE. That said, there is some reporting that agencies have been assigning and detailing personnel to assist the department, specifically CBP and ICE, with border security, immigration enforcement. Just recently, one of the news outlets reported that dozens of FEMA staffers were being assigned to support deportations. Last fall, we saw similar reportings of management-directed assignments, the MDAs, given employees at CISA, FEMA, TSA, Coast Guard 60 days to transfer or be terminated. So let me ask you all three questions, and again, briefly, that's for all of y'all. Briefly give us that, and if you need to put it in writing, reasonable time to be submitted to the chair and ourselves so we can share with the members. Number one, can you confirm if DHS has solicited your agency to supplement CBP or ICE for immigration enforcement operations? Number two, how much or how many of your resources are currently dedicated or detailed to CBP or ICE? Number three, do you know what kind of work they're performing for CBP and ICE? And again, whatever y'all can answer now or in writing. And then the other one is specifically to the Admiral. My understanding is Coast Guard, I think we did talk about this, expanding their presence to the border, Hidalgo, and specifically on the Rio Grande. This is something that I've advocated for many years. In fact, I secured language to one of the reauthorizations requiring the agency to conduct a mission analysis study regarding the Coast Guard presence along the Rio Grande. At that time, your prior leadership was taking a different position. They said we do blue waters, not brown waters. We only do international, and at that time you were at the Great Lakes, and I reminded them that the Rio Grande is a international waters. And of course, you know the type of assets. You can't bring any cutters there because of the water levels, but airboats, birds, assets can be used, and especially if you're going to be down along the border, the counter surveillance of drones of the Mexican cartels is extremely important. So just briefly cover that, but I would ask that you all give us a briefing as soon as possible about that, because that's an area that we cover. So with that, whoever wants to get started on the first question. So let's start off with the Rio Grande work that y'all be doing down there. And then the questions to all of y'all, either in writing or briefly explain that to us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question and for the opportunity to talk about what we're doing with Operation River Wall, which is 262 miles of the Rio Grande, starting from the Gulf of America going up. We have 400 members there. We have 44 boats. And as you know, the Coast Guard is the best boat drivers in the world. But the boats we're using there, they're new and they're different. We're using airboats. We're using rock boats is what they like to call them, but things that can work in shallow water. So it's absolutely within our current authorities and how we operate, and we will continue to be there. We've got a logistics center in Edinburgh, and we're looking to make that more permanent to make sure that we're supporting our teams in our phase as we go forward. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Sir, on to your three other questions. The Coast Guard, as we operate with the interagency within DHS, we will be there. One of the values and one of the capabilities that we bring is heavy lift for the department. So we have been called on a number of times to provide heavy lift assistance with our C-130s, with our C-27s. We currently have two C-27s that are flying missions every day for CBP and ICE. And we are continuing to do that on a requested basis. Thanks, sir.
Ranking Member, I'm not aware of any DHS solicitation or TSA employee detailed to CBP or ICE at the moment. So just to answer your question, and we can get back to you with further details.
Ranking Member, thank you. The department has taken a holistic enterprise approach in filling some of the key and critical skill gaps across the department and the organization. While CISA has transferred some personal management director reassignments over the last year, we had about 70 management director reassignments across all the components throughout. And in return, we also have received about 30 plus transfers to CISA that are qualified and who bring in a fresh perspective. Specifically to ICE, it's a handful of people that have been transferred, which are from different subdivisions within the agency.
Thank you. Regarding the management-directed assignments, we have not been impacted by any of those unless they were mutually agreeable in very, very small numbers. In terms of support to the CBP ICE mission, for us, it's just the opposite. CBP continues to provide high level of support for us in major events, and we haven't been involved in any of the removal operations. Thank you.
Similar to Director Quinn, I think it's just the opposite for FEMA, especially during the storm. The way the DHS winter storm surge happened, we not only had a lot of people coming in, but our coordination was really across everyone else, whether we saw CISA was there, Department of War was there, the Coast Guard was there, they're there with us every day, the National Guard was there, and so our surge is more in than out, but I'm not advised in total as to either numbers or whether it's actually happening or not, but we'll take that for the record, sir.
Thank you all. I'll have our staff.
Thank you. The chairman of the full committee has left for other pastures, and the ranking member of the full committee wants to be like me and go at the end. Thank you for being cool like that. And so the gentleman from,
Hold on.
we'll take this off, we'll take this offline. Yeah. The gentleman from Florida, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make no mistake about this. If there is a shutdown, it is a Senate Democrat leadership shutdown being manufactured. If your men and women are furloughed, if your men and women are forced to work without pay, it's because of the Senate leadership. No doubt about it. And today's meeting is about public safety that you all provide to this country day in and day out and in the near future. Think about the responsibility that you all are going to have around all of the NSSE events that are coming up with FIFA World Cup, with all of the American 250 events, and we're giving you fits and stops of funding. That's hard to do in the best of times. You have to be able to hire, train, and retain men and women of character. They've got to be well-equipped, properly deployed, skillfully managed. And I can tell you that's tough on the best of days, in the best of budgets. But to then throw in this challenge that we're putting on all of you and the men and women that serve with you is, to me, it's just unconscionable. And, you know, when Admiral Allen and I were serving back in Jacksonville when I was sheriff, I had a little saying that I love to talk about at our RDSTF meetings. I don't want to be the best first responder to a CBRN event. I want to prevent it before it occurs. That means that all of you have to be on top of your game. And for the Senate leadership to jerk these agencies around like this, again, it's just unconscionable. And so, particularly, CISA, you guys have got to get your act together. That reorganization, now, maybe it's done and maybe it's sitting over there, but the chairman's right. We asked for that, months ago? And we're still waiting. I hope you have an organizational plan. So if you'd like to respond, go ahead, Dr. McCullough.
Congressman, we have not initiated any structural reorganization that would affect our core statutory function. We remain committed to notifying the Congress if and when there will be any plans to do such changes. And what we're trying to accomplish is to make sure that we are assigning people in the right mission critical areas so that we can statutorily meet our required areas of mission.
So then you must have a organizational plan if you're assigning people where you need them.
Congressman, again, we have the staff. We did not have any issues, impacts due to the staffing issues. We do have the corresponding people that do the job in those respective mission areas. And if we do any reorganization, we will be more than happy to actually share with you firsthand.
Okay, I look forward to hearing that. Deputy Director Quinn, can you talk just a little bit about the burden that is put on the U.S. Secret Service in dealing with these NSSE events? And you're going to have a ton of them. You guys thought the lead up to the election, the presidential election, was horrible. This is going to be even worse, I'm afraid.
Yes, sir. This year, not to even mention 2028, is going to be an enormous challenge. In terms of NSSEs, we have America 250, which is pending signature right now. We have our standing NSSEs, the United Nations General Assembly. We have FIFA, which presents a lot of unknowns right now. They're all designated SEER events. We will be supporting as part of the whole government approach to SEER events. Unknown exactly how much resources we're going to apply, but we also know that any of those SEER events can quickly turn into an NSSE. A number of events are huge. The amount of resources that we have to put into all of those is going to be tremendously difficult in a lapse in funding. Fencing, personnel resources, long hours of overtime, all a significant impact to the organization.
And listen, I'm assuming also, and I'll close with this, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, that like the presidential protection lead up during an election year, you need those resources in advance. And some of the material that you need has to be ordered months in advance. And here we are about to lock down, stop your funding again. And I'm assuming at this point, you're already beginning to accumulate necessary equipment, personnel, and other things that you're going to need in the near future that you can't wait till the day before the event to hire or buy or purchase. So can you talk a little bit about how those things could potentially be delayed by this shutdown?
Yes, you bring a great point. And just one specific area is counter-drone technology. We need to be procuring high numbers of new equipment to be able to support FIFA and the major events this year. Supply chain issues they're terrible. Within that particular capability, we're looking at sometimes 6 months. If we aren't ordering today, we're looking at not having specific amounts of gear to be able to support the mission, not to mention what we're looking forward to in 2028 and beyond.
Thank you. We can't afford a shutdown. I want to thank all of you for your service to our country and to the citizens here. Thank you. I yield back.
You don't have anything to yield back, but thank you, Sheriff. The gentlelady from Illinois is recognized. The floor is yours for not a Florida 5 minutes, but let's try for an Illinois 5 minutes. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Let's be clear about why we are here. Republicans have allowed ICE and Border Patrol to operate out of control, abuse their authority, trample civil rights, break the law, violate the Constitution, and kill U.S. citizens, all while lying to the public about actions we can plainly see with our own eyes. So if my Republican colleagues were serious about keeping the American people safe, we'd be discussing how to protect citizens from their own government. Today, we should be hearing from Secretary Noem and the leaders of the agencies that are terrorizing and killing Americans. Instead, we're having this sham hearing with Republicans trying to shift blame, even though our Democratic leadership has already offered a funding proposal with safeguards to protect Americans from misconduct by federal agents. It seems the White House would rather shut down agencies like FEMA during historic winter storms than accept the bare minimum of accountability and transparency for ICE and Border Patrol. So here we are. Just to level set, Secretary Noem has not appeared before this committee since last year, before her agents killed Renee Good and Alex Preddy, before Greg Bovino terrorized my constituents in Illinois during Operation Midway Blitz, before more than 170 U.S. citizens were illegally detained by federal agents, before 5-year-old Liam Ramos was snatched on his way home from school because ICE wanted to use him as bait, and before countless other atrocities were committed on her watch. So where is she today? Since day one, Secretary Noem has violated our Constitution and the oath that she took to defend it. DHS's leader behaves as though congressional oversight is optional, and her negligence is enabled by my Republican colleagues. That negligence is apparent across the department. 4 out of the 5 DHS components represented here today are being run by acting officials, not because qualified leaders don't exist, but because Republicans have abandoned even the pretense of governing. And now, after failing to confirm permanent leaders, refusing congressional oversight, and starving the components that they do not care about, Republicans want to lecture this subcommittee about the impacts of a shutdown on the agencies that they have neglected all along. I don't think that's going to fool the American people. The real Republican priorities are painfully obvious. My constituents can understand what it means that FEMA recently denied Illinois' request for a major disaster declaration after severe storms. And Mr. Phillips, I'm not going to waste our time today asking you why this decision was made. I think we all know why. My constituents can see what is happening here. They paid their federal taxes, but now that they need help to rebuild, FEMA tells them, sorry, you're on your own. That's not a result of a funding lapse. That is a policy choice. It is a policy choice that reflects a pattern of governance that treats some missions and some communities as expendable. Apparently, the Trump administration has enough money for immigration agents to rappel down from helicopters to raid an apartment building on Chicago's South Side, resulting in 0 criminal charges, but not to address flooding when heavy rain overwhelmed the sewer system a few miles away. And under Kristi Noem's failed leadership, it is not just disaster response that's getting shortchanged in order to pay for the secret police terrorizing American communities. Cybersecurity, transportation security, maritime safety, our nation's most valuable resources and secrets, all being sold out by the Trump administration. Meanwhile, agencies like Border Patrol and ICE, whose actions are opposed by 63% of American voters, got a blank check in the big ugly bill last summer, and now my Republican colleagues want to give them another one with no strings attached. So please, please, spare us the fiction of Republican concern about paying federal employees or sustaining critical resources. This is not about resources, this is about choices. And it is also a choice to hold this sham hearing today instead of bringing Secretary Noem to answer for the unlawful abuses of power the American people have experienced under her leadership. This tells me everything that I need to know, so I have no questions for these witnesses, just one question for Secretary Noem. When will you stop hiding behind your subordinates, ma'am, and come explain yourself to this committee? And with 2 seconds left, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
To the gentlelady from Illinois, strong work. Thank you very much. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank the entire panel for being here, for taking time to come and answer our questions about the impacts of this potential shutdown caused by our friends on the other side of the aisle on this. Make no mistake that it's not hard to understand. One, we have continually in the previous shutdown, and then obviously in the efforts in this one, we're voting to keep the government open and funded, and others are voting no on that. It's not more complicated than that. I do not believe this hearing is a sham by any means. I respect your time, and I respect you all being here, letting us know what impact it has in your agencies and also in the men and women that work for the department and for the American taxpayer. So with that, I want to say that I believe strongly that shutting down the government and agencies and departments over policy disagreements is completely inappropriate and reckless. I've never supported a shutdown, and if Congress does not pass DHS funding measures, the result will be critical services to the public, as we've heard, including disaster response, law enforcement, cybersecurity, and emergency preparedness, being delayed or suspended with increased risk across the department. That includes our men and women in TSA, and Madam, you mentioned that. And you also mentioned one of our best here in Arizona, in Tucson, Jonathan, who I got the pleasure of meeting at the airport, actually, on the way here. We got here on the same flight. He came up and introduced himself and immediately knew why he was going to be here. We had a conversation based also on what you read and how that impacted him and many of his colleagues. And I can attest for that airport specifically, which I fly out of every single week, out of that airport and back in there, that they continually worked through the previous shutdown in the most professional manner. Never was able to tell that they were going through the stress that they were going through. So I do want to recognize their effort and all of them. Jonathan, great to see you here, and thank you for being here. My question will start with you, if I can, Ms. McNeil. As you know, during the shutdown, frontline screening is still required to take place, but we both know the kind of impact on staffing and moral shutdowns have on our men and women. So to your knowledge, what are the staffing issues that arise when there's a government shutdown, specifically on the employees, and left wondering when they will be paid next? And on that note, so I don't have to do a follow-up, I'm incredibly concerned about what, well, I'll leave it at that for now, and then I'll come back to the other side, the other part.
All right, thank you, Congressman. So what we saw was incredible impact on our workforce, and you might not have seen it because they did such a tremendous job keeping our operations running and our wait times within standards. But the mental and emotional toll that it takes on our workforce cannot be understated. We saw a lot of folks have to take on second jobs, making for extremely long work days. We did see, as the shutdown dragged on and on, a higher rate of unscheduled absences overall across the nation. Toward the end of the shutdown, that rate almost doubled, and in certain airports tripled, and that really does cause both strains on those that are working and obviously on our operations as well. We did also see a higher attrition rate during October and November of last year, 25% increase from that same time period the year before, which is quite concerning if we're looking at another potential shutdown, especially as we're entering spring break travel season and to prepare ourselves for the events coming at us this summer.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. And then I have time for just one more, Mr. Phillips. I'm extremely worried about the solvency of the disaster relief fund during a shutdown. I'm also incredibly concerned about what we saw last year, an unprecedented delay in obligating and expending funds from the DRF to assist states dealing with crisis on the ground. From my understanding, FEMA currently has roughly $27 billion in unobligated funding to respond to major disasters. However, the number decreases dramatically during a shutdown, is my understanding. Arizona, obviously known for wildfires and not many more natural disasters that we face from other states, but fires are a big deal for us, along with floodings as well of heavy rain during the monsoon season. So can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to respond. I spent a few days with Congressman Crane in Globe and Miami, Arizona, with response to the flood. And one of the challenges I think that we all face is related to the DRF, but really related to how rural America is treated by the DRF. There was some funding or some calculation challenges when the Stafford Act was first passed. They didn't update it, and that created an artificially low threshold for a major disaster. I believe that rural states, mine, yours in Arizona, and many others, many of you belong to or are representing states that are very rural. And I believe that much of the complication that we are seeing is really related to this artificially low threshold that allows more major disasters to be created, thereby allowing or sort of opening the door to more DRF funding. There's it's policy, but it's also related to this committee, of course. But I think my view of this is that we would welcome an opportunity to really discuss this in some depth when this is over. But make no mistake that our ability to process any payments under the DRF is going to be diminished if there is a lapse.
Thank you. Chairman, now you're back.
Arizona that they got in Florida, huh? To the gentleman from Hawaii, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The central issue today is ICE reform. And this hearing is nothing more than an attempt to avoid, conceal, deny, and gaslight that issue. The central issue today is ICE reform. And if we can responsibly reform ICE, then everything we're talking about here is a moot point. So the sooner we do that, the better we can get on with the rest of what we have to get on with all 5 of you. However, I'm going to repeat, because it may have been lost on people out there, what the ranking member said at the beginning.